What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. Wanted to talk to you guys about another overlooked prep and also an overlooked bug out bag item or an item for bugging out, and that's snake proof gaiters. So, this was something that I actually didn't think about when I lived in New York because New York State doesn't really have a whole lot of poisonous or venomous snakes. We had copperheads mostly in southern New York, but most of upstate New York, there's no venomous snakes with the exception of some pockets of the Catskill Mountains and the Adirondack Mountains that have rattlesnakes, but those are really small pockets and it's just a couple of dens. So if you're not in that particular town or that particular area where that den is, you're not going to see any rattlesnakes. But here in Pennsylvania, there's an abundance of rattlesnakes. According to the Pennsylvania Game Commission and the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission, 50 out of 67 counties in Pennsylvania have rattlesnakes. And the timber rattlesnake was delisted from threatened status in 2016 in Pennsylvania. So it's been basically considered normal, not threatened since 2016. So that's 7 years delisted from special protection. There's actually a hunting season for them now. It lasts from mid-June all the way through August, so it's a month and a half, and it's for hunting, it's for collection, it's for whatever you want to do with that snake. If you want to keep it as a pet, if you want to sell it, if you want to, take it as a trophy and have a skin on your wall and try some of the meat, whatever. It's whatever you want to do with it. You get a rattlesnake possession permit, and once you capture the snake, you can decide what you want to do with it. But the season is a month and a half long every year. So that tells you how many snakes there are in Pennsylvania, okay? Some areas of Pennsylvania are extremely dangerous to hike through in the summer months, particularly the north central region of Pennsylvania, which is where I live. That's where most of the rattlesnakes are located in Pennsylvania. And the reason why is there's a lot of rocky hills that are very steep, and there's a lot of mountain laurel and underbrush where they can hide, and they make dens in those rocky slopes, caves. They look for caves, and they make a den for the winter in a cave, okay? So this is critical for me because if I have to bug out, or even if I'm doing security patrols around my perimeter, or even if I'm going on a reconnaissance mission after SHTF, I have to hike outside of my area a few miles, or even beyond 20 miles. I have to explore and see what's going on in the world outside of my immediate area. These are going to be essential, okay? If you get bitten by a rattlesnake after SHTF, you're screwed, okay? Even if you don't get bitten by a rattlesnake, but you get bit by a copperhead, which is very survivable even without antivenom, you're going to be in a lot of pain because you're not going to have pain meds, you're not going to have an IV bag, you're going to be suffering, okay? And you could get some damage to your organs, and you're not going to have a doctor around to help you in most cases, all right? So you want to protect yourself. Do not underestimate the threat of venomous snakes, all right? Pennsylvania has an abundance of them because in Pennsylvania and in a lot of places in the eastern U.S., particularly the Appalachian Mountains, you have a lot of these rocky slopes and a lot of underbrush, and that's exactly what rattlesnakes like, especially timber rattlesnakes, okay? They need to have a cave of some kind or some kind of rock pile that they can get into to survive the winter, especially up here in Pennsylvania. They stay in their dens from October all the way through April. So they spend over half the year in their dens, okay? Majority of the year, they're actually hibernating. It's pretty funny. They usually go into their dens sometime in mid-October, depending on the temperatures and how cold it is. If it's a warmer fall, then they go in later. If it's a colder fall, then they go in earlier. But usually it's like mid-October through mid-April. So that's half of the year they spend in a den. So those rocky slopes and rocky outcroppings, they need that. They need boulders and rocks, caves, okay? They can't survive the winter without something like that. So that's something to keep in mind. You need to be able to identify rattlesnake country, okay? There's different species of rattlesnakes. You have timber rattlesnakes. You have diamondback rattlesnakes. You have prairie rattlesnakes. You know, I'm not going to sit here and claim to be a rattlesnake expert. I'm an expert of timber rattlesnakes because that's what we have here in rural Pennsylvania, okay? In the Allegheny Mountains, the Allegheny Plateau. That's what we have here, and an abundance of them. If you live in the southern U.S., you have other snakes to deal with. You have also cottonmouths, you have coral snakes, you know, there's all kinds of snakes out there. So you need to do the research, figure out what's in your area and what the snake habitat is for those particular snakes in your area. So we have mostly timber rattlesnakes here. There are copperheads as well. And the habitat is basically kind of the same for them. With the exception of copperheads, they don't necessarily like those rocky slopes like the rattlesnakes do because they can hibernate anywhere. They're smaller. They don't need to have like big caves to hibernate. So they don't have that affinity towards rocky slopes and rocky outcroppings like timber rattlesnakes do. But for timber rattlesnakes in my area, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for open, sunny spots. Okay, it could be a grassy field in the middle of a forest, or it could be if you're hiking in the woods and there's a clearing in the forest, maybe a few trees fell over, and it's enough to allow a lot of sun to get in through the canopy. That's going to attract rattlesnakes because they're going to go to sun themselves in that area to regulate their core temperature because they're cold-blooded. So they have to warm themselves up when they get cold, and then they have to cool themselves down when they overheat, okay? So you need to keep that in mind. That's how you're going to be able to find the snakes, all right? Open, sunny areas, open, sunny, grassy areas, roads. They really like roads. The reason why you'll always see a rattlesnake on a road, either crossing a road or laying on a road or laying on a hiking trail, is because roads heat up. Okay, from the cars driving on the road, from the sun hitting the road, the asphalt heats up and they slither onto that road, and it's like being, you know, in a sauna for them. It feels so nice and warm, you know, that hot asphalt against their body, it warms them up. So you'll see them often on roadways, on trails, okay, because they come out to sun themselves during the day and heat up. And then at night, they'll go off to the side, or if they overheat, they'll go off to the side of the road just enough to cool down. So if you're hiking on like a trail that's very sunny and open, or you're hiking on a road or something like that, you may not see a rattlesnake on the trail or on the road, okay, but they could be right off the side of the road because they might have overheated and then they slither off the side of the road to cool down. And what they'll usually do is they'll get under like some kind of bush, like a really thick bush. They'll go underneath that, or they'll go like under a log, and, you know, they could be right off the side of the trail. And if you're walking on the edge of that trail, and you're walking right along that brush or something, and he's just coiled up there, he could strike you, all right? And rattlesnakes don't always rattle before they strike. All right, they only rattle if they know you're coming ahead of time. They start to rattle to warn you. But if you suddenly surprise them by accident, they're not going to have a chance, so they're just going to strike, you know. Also, depending on the type of snake, if it's a younger snake, they're actually more dangerous because they don't have as much control over their fangs yet. They haven't learned how to release a certain amount of venom. So they're more likely to dump all their venom into you versus an older snake is more likely to just dry bite just to scare you, or just inject a little bit of venom just to make you sick but not dump all their venom into you. Okay, so that's something to keep in mind as well. But stay away from any kind of open sunny areas, especially like grassy areas or areas where you can't see to the ground. You have to be able to see where you're stepping, okay? That's critical. If you're walking through some kind of tall grass that's like, you know, up to your knees and you can't really see down, or you're walking through some dense mountain laurels, like here in Pennsylvania, there's an abundance of mountain laurels. It's actually the state flower, and mountain laurel is really thick stuff. And, you know, you're going through that thick brush or some ferns or something like that, and you can't see the ground where you're stepping, that's very risky, okay? So you want to avoid those kinds of situations. You want to walk through areas where you can see where you're going to be placing every single step, all right? You want to be able to see down to the ground. It sounds crazy, but that's what you have to do. That's what I do when I go hiking here in the summertime. I'm very cautious. Also, if you're like rock climbing or you're, you know, getting on all fours because you're, you know, climbing up a steep hill, be very careful where you put your hands, okay? You know, there could be a snake sunning himself on a ledge and you stick your hand over that ledge to grab it and pull yourself up. Guess what? He's going to bite you on the hand or on the arm and you're screwed, okay? You would be screwed. It would be a really bad day even if it wasn't SHTF. But if we're talking about SHTF, you'd be even more screwed, okay? So get yourself some of these. They'll protect you. And basically what these do is they just, so you have buckles here, and these buckles just buckle around. Okay, you put this around your calves, and it has this little protector here for your foot. Okay, and it's like some kind of plastic under here. They have different colors. This company, Pike Trail, I find these to be the best brand, good price as well. They have coyote brown and olive drab, but these are nice buckles here made of metal. They're a little bit shinier than I like, but they're heavy duty. So get yourself something like this. This is critical if you're going to be bugging out on foot after SHTF in snake country. This could be a huge help. Okay, it could save your life and save your limb. Okay, and furthermore, even if it's not SHTF, you can use these for hiking, which is what I do. When I go hiking in the summer here, I put these on. And, you know, if it's after SHTF and you have to do a long-range recon patrol, you're going to hike out 5, 10, 20, 30 miles, see what's going on. You know, you want to have these on and protect yourself, you know. So, you know, learn about the snakes in your area. What kind of habitat do they like? What are their habits? What do they look like? Okay, what areas do they hang out? All right, like for timber rattlesnakes, like I said, they like open areas. If it's like a densely wooded area, if there's like even one sunny spot, the snakes are all going to go there because that's the only sunny spot for miles. You know, if you're in like a thickly forested area, like here in Pennsylvania, there's a lot of, you know, forests everywhere, especially in the northern part where there's no farmland, it's all mountains. So you get a little clearing, all the snakes are going to go to that clearing to sun themselves. Or you have a road or a trail or something like that, they're all going to hang out there. And, you know, be wary of rocky slopes, okay? They like those rocky slopes. They can sun themselves there. They can hide from predators. They can go underneath the rocks and hide themselves. They also like shady spots as well. not just sunny spots, but shady spots. They like to also cool off. And that's why those rocky spots are nice for them as well, because they can heat up by laying out on the rocks that are exposed. But then once they overheat, they can go underneath the rocks, like deep under the rocks, and then they can cool down, because then it's going to be cooler there than outside. And then same thing in the forest, or, you know, they go out into an open clearing somewhere and they overheat, and then they slither off into a shady spot into the brush to cool off. Okay, and that's what they do. So you have to be aware of that, and don't go through any kind of thick brush, thick weeds where you can't see the bottom, you know, can't see the ground. You can't see where you're putting your hand. You have to be able to visually see the ground where you're putting your foot every single step, okay? Because if you don't, there's a risk you could step on something and you're not going to have a good day. So that's pretty much it, guys. Take care, God bless, and don't forget the 3 Ps. Prepare, practice, and persevere.